Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast, brought to you by schooloflaughs.com. Whether you're an aspiring comedian, a part-time pro, or a speaker who wants to become funnier, this is the podcast for you. We'll break down tools, tips, and techniques to help you get bigger, better, and more bookable. And now, here's the show.
Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast, everybody. Rick Roberts here. Hope you're having a good one wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Thanks to our Patreon supporter for this episode, Dustin Kreider. Appreciate your support through Patreon. You can find out more about how you can support the podcast through schooloflaughs.com/PATREON. Hey, today I've got June Colson here on the podcast. June Colson is a funny gal. I first met her at a CCA conference in 2017. CCA, if you don't know what that is, a Christian Comedy Association. And from there, she met a lot of great people, and then eventually took one of, I think, all of my classes, to be honest with you, that I've offered here in Nashville. And it just kept going and going and going. So 3 years plus in the journey here. So we're just going to jump into it. June and I kind of talk about the Clean Comedy Challenge, which she won this past year. We talk a little bit about the CCA. And then we talk about things she's doing online to write a little more, with a shout out to Joe Byers. All right, let's get into it. June Colson. Well, how are we doing there, June?
We're doing good. Just looking at the cloudy Kentucky day today.
I know.
Enjoying the fall weather.
Well, I tell you, I want to say, was the first time we met up was at a CCA conference, or was it in a class before that? I can't remember. I think it was a CCA.
It was at a CCA conference, 2017. It was your first year as the president of the CCA. And God had kind of been working on my heart that Christian comedy was a direction that I needed to go. And I was being very reluctant and resistant. And then I Googled Christian comedy, and the conference was literally an hour from my home. And then it was, so I was like, God, it's probably super expensive. So, because I was just a list of excuses. And he's like, yeah, it's not that bad. Also, it was my birthday weekend. So he just kept going, you're going to go. So yeah, I met the amazing Rick Roberts, who was running around, making magic happen at the CCA for his first conference as the president.
Yeah, now I kind of remember. I think he shot me a Facebook message, maybe even saying, hey, I'm thinking about this. Will this be a good thing to come to? And I was like, yeah, come check it out. And so that was a fun one. We had a lot of good stuff going on at those conferences. And you get to meet a lot of other people, had similar goals and similar desires and similar talents. So who were some of the people you met at that first conference where you're like, oh, this person's legit. There's somebody I can talk to and hang out with? And
well, when I got there, I was really just kind of shell shocked and like, God, I don't think this is where I'm supposed to be. They're probably not going to want me here. And so I thought I'd just lay low. But you guys slapped this beautiful yellow lanyard on all of the newbies. And so I felt like it was either going to be like, people were going to be kind to me because I was new, or they were going to turn and run because I was new. And so Kay Smith, the first person I met was Kay Smith, and she just grabbed my bag and she just said, okay, you're going to sit with me. You're new and you need friends, and let's all sit together. And so my goal of hiding, she just completely blew that out of the water. And I sat with Danny Successful Simmons, and Ronnie Wyman, but I thought his name was Wiseman. And he really, it was just one of those things. He was so wise, and he was so kind and encouraging, and was like, next year, I want you right now to set this goal that next year that you're going to come on stage and do a joke, that you're going to, do that, set that as your goal. And, oh my gosh, by the time I left, Lisa Mills and Kay Dodd had prayed over me. I met Marlo, I met the Brights. The list could just go on and on. And I was just overwhelmed by the kindness. I remember just driving home from Nashville to my home weeping, because I had no idea what God had in store for me, but I knew that this was a special group of people, and it was something now that I couldn't turn away from. So
that's awesome. Those are all really great people you talked about there. And Kay is the ultimate greeter Perfect first person to meet and hang out with. She's just so sweet. And then everybody else has been supportive too. It's interesting because when you come into a situation like that, you definitely don't know what it's like because you've never been there before. And the back of your head, you're always looking for the escape route. You're like, okay, I see those 2 doors over there, and they don't know. I could probably leave and nobody would even know I left. But you have to have those people around you to kind of get that out of your head and get you to stick around, which they did, which is awesome because you went to that conference, you went to other conferences, you started doing some stuff. And then I know you took my classes, and that's where I got to know you a little bit better. And, it's funny when I teach classes, I can kind of tell people that are going to stick with it and people that aren't, because the people that aren't even doing the homework in the first class or anything. But the people that are turning it in and like, oh, I thought of another one. Can I add, you were one of those people. So I'm like, oh yeah, I hope she sticks with this because she's got the energy. Sometimes that wears off pretty quickly for people when you're not around other people that are supporting you and you're just back home in Bowling Green or wherever you might be and you're just by yourself. So what kind of kept the momentum for you while you were not in Nashville, not at a conference, but just doing your thing?
Well, I'll tell you what. So right after the CCA, Lisa Mills and Kay Dodd, they had this conference called SheCon outside of Atlanta. And so I met a lot of women who were associated with the Christian Comedy Association, and then some that weren't. But they just kind of poured into me spiritually and also, as far as comedy was concerned. And I remember Kay Dodd saying, if God calls you into being a surgeon, you don't just go grab a scalpel. Like you need to learn how to do surgery. And,
ideally.
Yes. And you came to that conference and you did a little something there. And I just think you're an excellent teacher. You're just brilliant. And you're able to explain to, especially people like me, who has no idea what they're doing. You kind of take that scariness out of it and break it down and simplify it. And you did that there. So then my next thing was, okay, so I've got to take his classes. And so just to keep the momentum going was just learning, just finding places. Okay, where will people let me just set in and listen? And then at the second conference, Jeff Allen, I ended up meeting him and getting an opportunity to join a group where he was just an intimate group really that he has in his home. And I know you've been to that as well. And so then I was just surrounded by it. Like I kept going, I feel like they're going to kick me out any moment because these stories they were telling about their road gigs and all of these things. And I didn't have that, but it was a place where there were people who took me seriously and took the calling on my life seriously. And so, man, that'll give you momentum because you're right. Here in Bowling Green, there's not a big comedy scene. I have to drive an hour I drive an hour and a half to get to Jeff's. And, I've had people in my life that it's funny, the people I thought would be like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome, were the ones who were like, what? Wait a minute. And then the people that I went, even with I was praying to God about even telling my husband, he's a fire chief, things are very important to be in order in his life, right? Or a building.
Right.
So I'm like, how do I explain to this man who is very, who thinks totally different than I do, that this is what God's calling me to do? And I kept saying, God, he's not going to get it. Like he's not going to get it. And I finally told him and he goes, yeah, I don't get it, but I see it.
Right.
I do see it. And so that made it a lot less lonely of a journey because someone, for my husband to be supportive was everything to me. And it's ridiculous. He, the events that he goes to, I always glance over and see him and he's smiling and he's laughing like he has never heard what I'm saying, which most of the time I think he's not listening to me anyway.
The first time.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just continually writing, finding people smarter than me. And then now God's kind of giving me opportunities for people who were where I was at 2 years ago. I'm getting to start to pour into people now. And for me, that is exciting. And that definitely keeps it going.
Yeah, it's nice when you can kind of pass the torch along and all that communication you have with those people that are, behind you timeline wise makes you a better student of your own comedy. Because I find like even now, 30 years in, if I'm giving advice, I'm thinking it through. I'm like, Now, before I tell them this, am I applying this to my current situation? And if I'm not, I better do it because I'm not going to tell them to do something that I'm no longer doing, you know? And so you kind of start analyzing how you progressed and you're like, oh, that's what's worked the most. I need to focus more on that and harvest that a little bit more.
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity just last week with somebody I met through a morning writing group that I'm in, and she's in Georgia and she's a teacher, and she's actually doing comedy in her public speaking class. And she's new to the craft and just such a super cool person. But anyway, she messaged me and asked me if I would Zoom with her classroom and help the kids punch up some jokes. And oh my gosh, that was so much pressure. Like, oh, I got to be witty really quick because I'm someone who has to write it down, look at it, break it down, look at it again. Even in your class, there was an activity that we did, and you gave us like the premise of a joke, and we had to write a punchline, and you gave us like 8 premises and like 10 minutes to write something. And I just had test anxiety. I was like right back at the freshman and, algebra 2, where I probably was not in algebra 2 as a freshman, remedial math in my freshman year. And I was like, oh no, I have to think fast. But I pulled out the notes that I had from the very first writing class that I had with you. And I just wrote down some basic stuff for myself to remind me how I could help this person.
Oh, good.
Punch up that joke, and man, that was a huge help. So, but cool to be able to, to talk to these girls that were freshmen in high school, and they were really funny. They had some really funny stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, maybe they should be writing for me.
Yeah.
Doing this.
That's great. Well, I was going to ask you too, you did the Clean Comedy Challenge, which, I've promoted on the podcast several times. Leslie Norris does a great job just putting together this contest, but it's also kind of a mini conference in itself where you have people come in and do some sessions and teach and some Q&A and all that kind of stuff. But there's stage time every night. There's chances to advance. So just for the people who have heard about that but never done it, can you give me a little breakdown on what happens during the day and then talk about how the contest rolls in the evenings? And if people don't know, June won it this past year, so congratulations to you on that. But what would people expect if they attend one of those?
Well, this year was a little different format than what she typically does. I actually went the year before and observed the competition, and one, because I had a lot of friends who were going to be in it, so I wanted to be there and cheer them on, and I was really considering doing the competition. So I got to watch it, and the typical format, I believe, is they have 2 nights, or actually 3 nights of performances. And then on the 3rd night is when they do the finalist or whatever get to perform an extra time, and they vote. But because of the COVID and everything that was going on, we were only able to have 2 days at the venue. So basically throughout the day, you've got different people. This year we had Robert G. Lee and Bob Zaney and Jovi Sad spoke to us, and then also Andy Freeman, the producer of the Huckabee Show, who I think is one of the funniest people. Oh my gosh, he's one of the kindest and funniest people ever.
He's one of my favorite people for sure.
Is he not? And his wife was there, and I just absolutely fell in love with them. I'm like, I just want to go hang out, at their house for a day. That might be off-putting, I guess, if I just showed up on their lawn. But anyway, back to what you asked me. So throughout the day, these people, these veterans of comedy and different, areas in comedy are there to just, do like a mini conference. Like you said, you're just kind of learning from their ups and downs and just getting great advice from them. And then for us, we performed on Friday night. And then when we came in on Saturday, then you had a mini conference basically then, and then you went into separate rooms and you received critique from the judges. So we went into one room where Bob Zaney and Jovi Sad was, and then you were, ushered over to the next room, and it was Andy Freeman and Robert G. Lee. So from there you get, real, just real advice on what they saw you do, from your stage presence to your material and delivery and, all of that. So so yeah, the Bob Zaney, he was funny. Joby probably did the most critique in that room. And then Bob Zaney said, "You're from Bowling Green, Kentucky?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, I would say it was bowling alley, but they thought it was too redneck, so we call it Bowling Green." And that was his advice for me. So let me tell you, when I made it into the finals, when I did my final performance, you better believe I opened with that. Whether I thought that was funny or not, he was one of the judges. And that's what he said. And I went, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because technically, you perform 4 times, you have to have 4 openers. Every time you go on, and I think an opener has always been my kind of hang up. And then I'm like, oh man, I got to come up with 4. And I'm like, God, what do I do? And then he went, well, Bob Zaney just gave you one. So, so I went with it.
No, that's a real benefit of those multiple night contests, because you do need to have the opener, the closer, and there's that mental gymnastics of I got to save my strongest stuff for last, but not all of it, because I got to get to the last night. So you have to kind of portion it out to where you're showing that you're funnier every night, but you can't lay off too early or else you don't get there.
Yes, it reminded me of the days that my son played baseball, and watching how they were strategic with the pitcher, and it's like, oh, but we got to get to the last game, but we don't want to pitch it out here, and it really was like trying to figure out what to present. I did have a veteran comedian give me advice previous to the competition about making sure that I did some of my hot dog material. My dad's name is Hot Dog,
right?
And he drives an El Camino, and all that stuff. So one of the pieces of advice that I was given was that, regardless if you win or you don't win or whatever, you have an opportunity to present what you can do, and you want to leave them with something that's unique that no one else is going to do on stage. And, this comedian said, it's hot dog for you. It's always hot dog. No one else has,
right.
That material. And it's funny because it is so extreme. My family is so crazy and off the chain, we have a privacy fence built out of pallets. Like that's what my daddy has. Right. And we're not like everybody else. And the first night Andy Freeman walked up to me and his first question was, now how much of that is comedic exaggeration? And I'm like, it's my family. I swear. I've had comedians give me advice to change names, because my brother is Dewey and my sister's Bobby Joe. And then I just got a new sister last year, thanks to some genetic testing, and her name is Leslie. And, but they told me, now Bobby Joe, Dewey, my sister's husband's name is Gibby Gilbert, right? And they're like, you should probably it's not real believable.
Right.
It's really my family.
You're like, I have to de-emphasize how crazy they are. I'm not sweetening any of this, man. I got to put some salt in this to make it.
Exactly. I have to downplay it a little.
That's hilarious. Well, the contest is great for a lot of reasons you mentioned. You get to work with some industry professionals on the producing side. You get to work with some comics that have done it for 30 plus years and have had success. Robert G. Lee's done stuff with TV and movies and written screenplays and books. And Bob Zaney's was one of Bob and Tom's biggest contributors forever and ever, and all kinds of things. So you get some real life experience and some suggestions from those folks, which, the people that I've seen that have done well have at least listened and applied some of the advice they've got. But I've also seen people go there, get the advice, and not change a single word. And, that frustrates me for the people who want to go to a competition to win it, but not to learn anything. So I think if you learn anything, there is a good chance of winning. But if you don't learn anything, you're not leaving any better than you came in. And I've seen people do multiple competitions year after year with the same set, not changing anything. And it just drives me nuts.
Well, I think Leslie does a fantastic job of bringing in people with true credibility who really do have an interest in seeing, people grow in their talents and their ability. I think a lot of people that I've seen have gone through the Clean Comedy Challenge that I just have a lot of respect for. And because she put so much effort into it, and because it's so important to her and Joby, it's been a launching pad for a lot of people to just get serious and really do something and just learn. Nowhere else. Bob Zaney's not coming to Bowling Green to come talk to me and tell me how I can, improve myself. I mean, I sent him a message, but he never replied. So,
well, I also know that you you take part in some of the online opportunities that are available to comics. And Joel Byers has been on the show before a couple of times. Great guy over in Atlanta who puts together this Right 10 Club where basically you log on, I think it's 9 a.m. Central Time. And, you can search him on Facebook, Hot Breath Podcast. But they have a word of the day. You got 10 minutes to write. You post a joke or two that you wrote into the comment section on Facebook. People like it to give it a vote. And then at the end of the day, there's a winner. And I see your name popping up on there quite a bit. And it's a fun exercise. I've done it once recently, just kind of poke in there and see what was going on. And it's really cool. And he's got quite a group of participants that jump in there every day. And some people, you can just tell, like, this is the best opportunity they have because they might live, like you say, out in the middle of nowhere and clubs aren't popping right now and no audiences are gathering. So when you can impress, not that it's important to impress other comedians with your writing, but when you can have the joke of the day amongst 100 plus people who are trying to do the same thing, it's a great little testing ground. I've seen some great jokes posted. Almost all the winners are jokes. I'm like, oh man, that is something I wish I would have wrote that, So other than what I've told people about it, what do you like about the Right 10 Club? And how would you, if somebody's never done it, what would be your advice for them to get involved with it?
Well, it's interesting because I had heard about Joel Byers after you interviewed him. So when I first got into comedy, that learning curve, I knew I wanted to try and, I hate to say flatten the curve.
Yeah.
Used to, that would have been okay to say, but now I'm like, whatever. I don't want to hear that phrase again.
Yeah.
But I would listen. I just went back and started listening to, all of your podcasts and trying to just learn from. Gosh, when you messaged me about being on this podcast, it just brought tears to my eyes because I'm like, Lord, because one of the first prayers I had was, God, I don't know how to do this. There's no one here doing this, but when he calls you into something, he's not worried about that. That's me as a human, concerned about how to make it happen, And so one of the tools that I was given was your podcast. So I heard about Joel on that. You had interviewed him. And, so then I went over and kind of listened to his podcast. Well, then early on when things started to shut down, I saw him pop on live on Facebook and it was like 8 people. And he just was like, hey, while we're down, let's do this, thinking it'd be like a week or two. It's now been over 200 episodes, 200 mornings that we have had one word of a day. So it was just a few of us doing it. Now it's international. There are people in India and Russia and Australia and Canada, like every morning. And I've done a few of their open mics, virtual open mics. And it's crazy because I'm telling jokes to someone who's sitting in a room in India and someone who's sitting somewhere in Australia. And what's interesting is like, sometimes the question is, okay, if I did this in the United States, what store would I use?
Right.
What they could change. But basically I am a storyteller. And so one-liners, I just kind of had it in my head that I'm not very good at that, but I'd never really applied myself to doing that. Well, the joke of the day that typically wins is a really tight one-liner. And so, basically, he'll throw out a word and then he starts a timer and you have 10 minutes to write a joke on that word. And, it's not all magic, but it's made me think quicker. It's helped me with word economy. It's got that stigma out of my head that, I can't do, one-liners. I'm not good at that. I'm a storyteller, but the best stories have some really good one-liners in them, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now it's branched off into, he does like a writing competition each month and you do a 90-minute little bit on an emotion and they send you the emotion. And I did September's. I did September's and the emotion was love. And so I just did 90 seconds on basically love advice that Mo and Hot Dog have given me. Right. And so I ended up being a finalist. So you get 3 finalists and then it's played on his Facebook Live or whatever, and then the group votes. But I've made some connection. It's given me that opportunity, like I said, to speak in a Zoom classroom and get to be a part of, some young kids starting to find interest in comedy. So that's why I like it. Really, it's kept me disciplined, and then also in a time that was just so. It felt like just there's nothing to do in comedy. It was just a consistent reason to get up every morning and write something. And now I've realized, looking back at those jokes, those one-liners, they're really premises.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I've realized, going back and looking at, oh wow, that's actually a really good premise. I should, build on that. So I'm trying to write a little bit more on some of the one-liners.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you can always build off of it. If something gets a laugh once, there's more to explore for sure. And so the initial punchline could just be the setup. And an exercise I like to try once in a while is take a good, strong punchline and move it to the setup and see what I can do with it from there. Because if you've got a really, really interesting setup, then it can go, really nicely in the punchline somewhere else. But it doesn't always work, but it's one way to kind of make your whole act stronger by replacing your setup with the punchline and seeing where that leads. So that's cool you noticed that. And if people want to follow you now, where's the best place for them to go?
It's June Colson Comedy.
Okay.
.com. And then it's same thing. I've got June Colson Comedy on Facebook.
Well, it was great catching up with you. I'll send everybody to your social so they can follow you, and just keep up the good work.
Hey, Rick, it beyond an honor and a pleasure for you to have invited me on here. You're amazing, and you do so much for just the comedy community. And I just there's just no way you could realize the impact that you've had on my life and my walk and my calling. So I just hope God continues to bless you and your family. And thank you for letting me be on here. It was huge for me.
Oh, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick.
Hope you enjoyed the interview with June Colson. A breath of fresh air right there, and happy to know her, happy to be part of her journey, and she's just going to keep on going. She's got all kinds of things down the road for her, I can tell already, so always good checking in with the former student, but even more important, checking in with good people doing good things. Hey, we talked about Joel Byers on the podcast. You can go back and listen to the episode with Joel Byers, episode 154, where Joel and I talk about all things comedy. And you can find him on Facebook too. Just search Hot Breath or Right 10 Club, and he should pop up somewhere. If none of that works, you can go to joelbyerscomedy.com, and I'm sure he links to everything off of that website. I did want to say a quick thanks to the 10 of you who signed up for the virtual performance class. We were stacked top to bottom. Everybody did a great job. I just want to encourage you to keep on writing and keep on doing whatever you can. I mean, we did the performance class on Zoom, and things were still funny. And let me tell you, if it's funny on Zoom, it's probably going to rock in a real environment with other people who aren't taking a class, making mental notes, and all of that while you're performing. So everybody got good laughs on that. Just want you to keep it up. Also, just a reminder, I'm available for coaching calls. You can email me about that for sure, schooloflaughs@gmail.com. But I've had some interest in that. I've got several people where I check in with them on different things, and people are like, what happens on a coaching call anyway? And you know what? A lot of different things can happen. For example, some people check in and just want to go through their material and see where they can punch things up. Other people want me to kind of look at their video of a performance with them. And as the performance goes on, we watch it through a screen share. I can pause it, offer up insights on what I would do differently, or maybe suggestions on what they could do to improve it or to make it more clear. I can also do those video reviews as part of your coaching calls, but have you not present. If you want me to just watch the video, make comments in the corner of my video, and send that back to you where you're seeing me in the corner, kind of like a director's cut, helping you with your stand-up act, I can do that too. All kinds of things available to you on those coaching calls. If that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, just shoot me an email. I'll send you back some more information. schooloflaughs@gmail.com, and put coaching calls info in the subject line. All right, it's going to do it. Thank you guys very much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Stay safe and stay funny.
Thanks for listening to the School of Laughs podcast. If you'd like to hear more School of Laughs podcasts, you can find them on iTunes and Stitcher.com. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. For information on upcoming live and online classes, visit schooloflaughs.com. Until next time, stay tuned, stay focused, and stay funny.